Welcome back to the Wildcat Wire, everybody. I'm Nate Thomas, and I'm joined here by Jake Janisek again. And today, moving off of episode 1 where we talked about Nebraska and Colorado, we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to go to the NSAA high school football, Nebraska high school football. How are you feeling going into this, Jake?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's been a pretty exciting season so far. Not really anyone completely at the top. Outside Omaha Burke, every team's kind of really been competitive this year.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of great stuff going on. I know we're going to focus a lot on Class A today. We'll talk a little bit about C1 and B once we get towards the end of this podcast, but I kind of want to start it off with Omaha Burke. And, man, are they good?
Yeah, Omaha Burke, they're a pretty good team. They got two Division I athletes in Chris Hickman and Nick Henrich. They've really been unstoppable this year, Nate.
Yeah, and I remember when we went to go watch them play against Millard West, I just looked at this team and I'm like, wow. Even outside of Hickman and Henrich, they have really good players. You look at their quarterback, Tyler Chadwick, they go 4 deep at running back in that game. And all 4 running backs came in and played actually very, very well. And it's just crazy to see how good a high school team is like that here in Nebraska.
Yeah, they're probably one of the better schools that we've seen in Nebraska in a while. And right now, I just feel they're really the state favorites as a whole. But, yeah, they've been really unstoppable this year. I don't know What's some things that you feel about them that makes them just like one of the best team in Nebraska right now?
I mean, I think you got to look at their defense first of all, because that defense is led by Nick Henrich, who is a middle linebacker. He is committed to go to Nebraska next year, and he's averaging double digit tackles per game. And to see someone who, and I mean, even if he's not getting a tackle on that play, he's still somehow involved. He reads the game so well. He can fly sideline to sideline, and he just knows where the play is going. Like, even if the running back is going down, like, the A-hole, he will, like, get into that position and force the running back to make a decision, like, hey, do I bounce outside? Do I try and go somewhere else where I don't have the hole? It's just, he is a nightmare to go up against. And you look over at Hickman, who plays defensive end or outside linebacker in a kind of 5-2-3-4 system, and his length off the edge is just crazy. He's like, he's 6'6", he's got long arms. Really hard to throw over him or try and make a play when his big hands and arms are in the air.
Yeah, we really saw when Burke went against our Millard West Wildcats just how they're able to stop this offense. Just pretty much, like you said, Millard West just wasn't able to do anything that game, and they've made other teams kind of look dumb, too, with just how well their defense is. Because, I mean, if you're looking at the Lincoln Southeast game, they kind of gave up 28 points, but they still scored 49. But with Millard West and Omaha Central, they gave up 14 against a pretty good offense in Millard West, and then only allowed 7 on Omaha Central. So they've just overall been, I feel, the most impressive team in Nebraska so far.
Yeah, and so we're going to finish off talking about Omaha Burke here, and we're going to switch gears and move on to the Bellevue West Thunderbirds, I believe. And they've got an amazing offense like they always do. And I think you got to start with Javon Ducker and Xavier Betts. Xavier Betts is probably one of the best receivers of the state. I know he's a 4-star recruit, and he just took his official visit down to University of Nebraska over the past weekend. And Ducker is, I mean, I felt like he came out of nowhere a season ago. I was sitting and watching Millard West against Bellevue West, and I looked at it and I'm like, he's getting like 7-8 yards a carry against a good core of linebackers and a good defensive line. And I know, like, even if you put 9 in the box against him, he's got that speed and power that can just break tackles and get loose. And he has incredible hands coming outside of the backfield, and my comparison to him is like Le'Veon Bell in the NFL.
Yeah, their offense pretty much has been unstoppable this year. They against Lincoln they scored 49. Against Bellevue East, Bellevue East isn't good, but it's still like really hard to put 81 points up on a team.
Yeah, that's crazy. Even to beat any team, 81-6 is incredible.
Mm-hmm. And then putting 51 points on Papillion La Vista South. I'm really intrigued by this game though Friday night when they go at Elkhorn South. Elkhorn South, the team kind of coming up. They were in Class B. Now kind of putting themselves in Class A, and they've really been impressive too. So that should be a good game Friday night when Bellevue West goes against Elkhorn South.
Yeah, and when Elkhorn South moved up to Class A this season, I was just kind of like, well, what are they going to do? They've been dominating Class B ever since they started as a school. And it was just kind of like crazy to see, well, now they're 3-0. They've beat Millard North, and I know they also beat Elkhorn as well, and to kind of see them like, wait, this could actually be a pretty good team. I know they're ranked inside the top 10 at the moment, and they've just put together a pretty good season so far.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see like a team that because I feel there is a definite like difference from Class A to Class B and probably talent wise. And it's kind of surprising that they've really been able to make that transition into Class A so easily so far.
Yeah, and I think you kind of compare them to the other teams that have moved up this year in Elkhorn High and Gretna High School. Like the two of them, they're just getting outmatched every single game, and they're not living up to the hype that they had inside of Class B. But I mean, it's pretty hard for a team to move up from playing against schools that have like 700-800 kids to playing against schools that have 1,500 to 2,500 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of get a bigger talent pool together. You're probably going against some like bigger, stronger guys, and it's hard. I mean, to compete up against that.
Yeah, honestly, Gretna and Elkhorn, they both haven't done horrible in Class B, but yeah, you're right. The transition, they just haven't been able. Gretna, they lost to Millard South. Yeah, Millard South's pretty good, but they got shut out 27-0, and then they lost to Papillion La Vista South, which hasn't had their most amazing season, and then got blown out by Pius, who just made the transition earlier. Was it last year Pius made the transition up to Class A, or is it this their first year?
I know they've been kind of like floating around between A and B, but they definitely did make a big splash last year at the end of the season. They beat Omaha North, and I know they made it into the playoffs, but they were unable to make it through the first round. But to kind of see a team like, well, actually now we're going to have to put them on our radar for next year is what everyone was saying last year. I know they haven't like been great, but they haven't been terrible. They're a solid team, and they're a team that you're going to have to watch out for if you go up against them. We're going to move down our rankings here, and we're going to go into Grand Island. And first week we were like, well, they don't look too hot. They haven't been good the past few years, but they made a splash when they played against Kearney, and they won 46-0 against the defending runner-ups, who we thought was going to have a really good chance at getting back to the championship game and winning it this year. So they really haven't had the toughest test so far on their schedule outside of Kearney.
But, I mean, still, 3-0, still nothing like you can put it past them. But, they played at Lincoln and Papillion La Vista, but we kind of won't really see until kind of later when they start getting into those tougher games, like at Millard West. So, yeah, they haven't been challenged too much, and we'll just kind of have to see if they're ready for a big challenge later in the season.
Yeah, Lincoln High is not going to be like one of your best teams that you see. I know I had them listed as one of my dark horses for the season with Cedric Case as quarterback. He's pretty darn good from Lincoln High Lynx, but they just haven't met their expectations so far this season. Everyone expected them to be a top 5 team. I know they got a blazing offense, but the defense just isn't able to keep up with them, and that's kind of what we saw when they played against Bellevue West a few weeks ago, and they ended up losing in overtime. We're going to continue moving on here, and let's talk about these two Millard teams. Millard South Patriots and the Millard West Wildcats are Millard West Wildcats. And it's been, Millard South was like, well, are we finally going to get back to where we were competing as state champions and making noise inside the playoffs? And we kind of saw a glimpse of that last year when they did beat Lincoln High in the first round of the playoffs. But they've got a really young team. Most of their team is full of juniors, and they just, something about me is just saying, like, this is a really good team that can almost match up against Omaha Burke when it comes to playoff time. And you kind of have to start with Cole Herbolsheimer, who is recruited by a lot of D1 schools. He's one of the top 2020 prospects inside of Nebraska. I know he just went down to Kansas State last weekend, but he's a big guy up front, and they've got a couple of other ones. They got some decent skill position players. I know TJ Urban is quarterback. He's a very dual threat type of guy that you're going to have to deal with running and passing, and it's just kind of a nightmare of a team to go up against.
Yeah, Millard South, they're starting out 3-0, pretty good, but with you saying they're young, I'm really tempted to see how this team's going to be like next year, just because how young their players, some players are going to develop. They're going to be a really good team next year.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have to really watch them. They're definitely going to be listed as the favorites to start, but, I mean, I kind of compare this to Omaha Burke last year. We were saying a lot of this team is all juniors. They've been playing together for a few years now. Like, once they get into their 4th year together, what's it going to be like when you have Hickman, Henrich, Chadwick, and a couple of other players on that team, and they're just coming out and guns blazing, and they're just hot out of the gun, and they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't underestimate how good this team really is.
Let's kind of go to Millard West here, who's kind of had like a different kind of season, I would say. Not a lot of people probably were expecting too much from him, but so far the Wildcats have done pretty good, and they're kind of running a 2-quarterback system.
Yeah, it's just kind of awkward to see. Like, the offense just doesn't have as much rhythm as they would if they're running with one quarterback like they were with Giovanni Guido. When you're kind of bringing quarterbacks in and out, you're running with a different skill set. You're trying to base your plays around who is in the game, and it's kind of hard to find the rhythm. I know Nate Glantz and Tristan Gomez both played pretty well. Jackson Wright has been a very good running back this year, and Dallas Beanham at receiver has been great as well.
Yeah, it's still kind of intriguing about the whole 2-quarterback system, but the Wildcats have kind of been able to go through it. They can't be really mad at their only one loss against the Burke team that we've been talking about most of this podcast. Really good number 1 team. But with this game on Friday, really big matchup, 2 big rivals in Millard South and Millard West. What are you kind of looking forward to in this game?
I mean, it's going to be a fun game. We're both going to be down there, and it's going to be a very intriguing matchup with these two teams. I know everyone is looking forward to it around here, and I'm just kind of expecting to see who is going to win the matchup up front. We said that a lot with Millard West against Omaha North, and I'd say that game went 50-50 up front, but Millard West ended up on top. We'll talk more about Omaha North here right after this, and it's just, I think that's what it's going to come down to again, is who plays better on the lines, who's going to get the more push up front on offense and defense, and that's going to be the winner of this game. Just like I said, we're going to move down to Omaha North. The defending state champions, they've been
kind of a slow start to the year, if you want to call it that, 1-2.
Yeah, they lost their first game 12-7 against Creighton Prep, but Xander Gray has been absolutely spectacular for them. He rushed for close to 250 yards against Creighton Prep and against Millard West, and he's got to be he's over 600 yards so far in this season, and it's just kind of ridiculous to see someone rushing like that in Class A. But he's a different type of back. He is listed as 240 pounds, but he runs like he's 190, and we saw that against Millard West.
Yeah, he could easily be like a middle linebacker the way he's running through those holes, and he's just honestly out of like all the quarterbacks running backs I've seen, he's definitely been probably the top one in Nebraska.
Yeah, and they just haven't quite been able to get their complete offense settled. Mm-hmm. I know quarterback Houston Fogelstrom has not been great, but he hasn't been that bad. But if they can kind of like sort out that quarterback situation, get a passing game going, like they just didn't have any downfield threat. And I think that's their weakness is you're not able to stretch the field, and that allows a team to kind of stack 8-9 guys in the box, fully commit to stopping the run, and you're really looking for something to kind of like get something going on offense. So if they don't have that downfield threat, it's just kind of hard as a team.
Yeah. Let's look at the last team we haven't covered in the top 10 yet, Omaha Westside. How you kind of feeling about them, Nate?
Westside is interesting. They have Vontae Dickerson, who is probably the top 2021 player in the state. He's got jets. And he plays wide receiver and defensive back, I believe, for that team. And he is just so fast. It's hard to even compare him to somebody just because, like, once you have that speed, and it's just going back to what we talked about, having a downfield threat, you can just put him out on the edge and almost run just go routes all the way down the field, tell him, run as fast as you can, we'll get the ball to you somehow, and like this is how we're going to do it. But Westside is a very good team all around. They haven't had quite the toughest matchups so far on their season. They are 3-0, though, and I think that's going to be someone that you have to look out for, almost like your Lincoln Pius or your Lincoln High teams that you'll see here in Class A.
Yeah, they're playing Gretna this Friday, but it'll be intriguing to see kind of how they do with their first bigger matchup of the year at Creighton Prep. The one against Gretna could be a good one too, because Gretna kind of hasn't really been able to get anything going. They might try to have a comeback game against Omaha Westside. So that's kind of the top 10. Anyone in Class B or Class C that you kind of really focused on, Nate?
I mean, I think you're going to have to start with Class C1 and Aurora quarterback Baylor Shearman, and wow, he is attracting interest from Scottsbluff all the way here to Omaha so far this season, and I just kind of want to start off with so far what he has accomplished in his 3 games. He's 65 of 96 for, and let me repeat myself after I say this, 1,234 yards and 19 touchdowns in 3 games.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, especially for a high school quarterback.
Yeah, and just to see someone like, I know I haven't seen Aurora play yet, but I've been told that they have one of the best receiving corps in the state. But I don't care who your receivers are. If you're throwing for 1,200 yards in 3 games at the high school level, you have got to be pretty darn good quarterback. And just to add in 19 touchdowns in that's over 6 touchdowns a game. That's crazy to see.
Yeah, and they're number 1 in Class C1, and just they've already scored 181 points this season. It's been pretty crazy, just like how a high school quarterback has been able to just throw over 1,000. He's thrown over 1,200. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just kind of weird to see. He is currently committed to South Dakota State to play basketball, and he's one of the better basketball players out west. But if you're throwing 1,200 yards, like, you're going to attract some pretty good attention football-wise.
And we're only 3 games in the season. You got to think about that, too. He could maybe even get to over 3,000 this year.
Yeah, and currently he's on pace to throw for 3,600 yards, almost 3,700. And, I mean, if you're close to that 4,000-yard mark, like, you're going to get some probably, like, D1 attention from around here. And currently he's, like, he has got to be your, like, first pick to get first-team All-State, like, no matter where you're from. Like, if you're writing high school sports and you're, like, putting together your, like, All-State teams at the end of the season, he's probably going to be your top pick to put at quarterback. I just kind of want to touch base on some other really good players that we see over in Class B and C, and I think you're going to have to start with Garrett Snodgrass. So far this year, he's committed to Nebraska. He's from York High School. And, I mean, we've seen it the past 2 years. He does it all for his team. He's a wide receiver. He's a linebacker. He's a running back. He'll even come in and play quarterback sometimes. And you put someone like that in your team that can almost play any position. And you also throw in Noah Strafersky and that line, who is attracting some D1 attention as well. And, I mean, that can be almost a deadly combo. You got your big boy up front and your athletic guy running in behind. And that's kind of what we see with Omaha North and Mickey Butler and Xander Gray, just to make a comparison. But, I mean, I think that's kind of, like, puts together how this has been going. These next 2 classes for Nebraska are going to be the best 2 classes that we have seen in a really long time in the state. And I think even if you want to throw in Western Iowa, you kind of put in Max, I think his name's Duggar. He's a quarterback for Lewis Central High School. He is currently committed to Texas Christian University, TCU, very good team in the Big 12. And, I mean, this is probably the biggest talent pool that we've seen in a very long time inside of Nebraska.
Yeah, it's been pretty good to see some, like, more tension and, like, more recruits in Nebraska, because it just seems like we haven't had talent like this in a very long time, and it's kind of exciting to see it. And also it's kind of exciting for, you know, some local teams maybe to get some really good talent on their team. Yeah,
and when you put together some talent like this here in Nebraska, and you just, like, these younger guys are like, well, I want to be a lot like the star quarterback of the high school in our city, and I kind of want to be like him in the future. I know there's probably a lot of kids out in Aurora looking up to Shearman, and, like, I want to be a lot like him when I grow up in 5-6 years and when I get to high school. So when you have this, like, great group of players come together like we have right now, like, 5-6 years down the road, like, you can even look at it now and say, like, wow, this is going to be a great motivation for some of these younger guys to come in and be even better and want to play just like them. And that's kind of how it's going to lead down the long road for Nebraska in terms of high school football recruiting. All right, we're going to get towards the end of this here.
Yeah, just kind of maybe something just to finish up on. I know it's kind of early in the season, but who's kind of your favorite to win state this year for Class A?
I mean, you can't really argue with the fact of Omaha Burke. They're, like we've talked about them already enough, all around the best team in the state.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any teams that can maybe stump Omaha Burke?
I mean, I think you put together a gun-blazing offense like Bellevue West or Lincoln High that can throw the ball downfield. And you kind of have a chance, like, you spread a team out like that, you can probably get something going through the air, but there's almost, like, nothing you can do on the ground. and that's why I think Lincoln High and Bellevue West have a chance to maybe upset them. But, I mean, we've seen teams get a lot better down the road of the season, and we've seen teams not do so well. And it'll just be interesting to see once we get here into October and the start of November what teams can really do. Is there anything else you want to kind of add into this?
No, not really. Just kind of looking more for another exciting season for Nebraska football. I think that's going to do it for us here at the Wildcat Wire. I'm your host, Jake Janasek.
And I'm Nate Thomas, and we'll catch you next time.